As is traditional in most programming classes, I'd like to take a moment to create a capstone project that will combine many of the skills that you've learned into a single workbook. We're going to stay with the familiar scenario, which is recording sales and displaying commissions for those sales. First, I'll show you how the workbook functions, and then I'll show you how I did it. So we're here in cell D10, and I will type my name, Kurt Fry, and then in D11 my sales amount, and I'll say I had a sale for $10,000. Press return, and now I can click this button to record my sale. A message box indicating my commission is $800 appears, and then it asks if I would like to enter another sale. I do, so I'll say yes. And Excel leaves my name in the name box, but it deletes the value from the sales amount box so I can type in a new amount. And obviously, if a new salesperson were behind me and wanted to add their own sales, then they could simply edit my name out. Let's say I had another sale for $5,000. Hit return, click to record, my commission is displayed, and this time, when I'm asked if I want to enter another sale, I'll say no. When I do, the workbook goes away. What happened was that I created a procedure to save the workbook and then close it. Let me show you how I did it. I will open the workbook back up, get my welcome message, welcome to the commission tracking workbook, click OK, and now I can show you the code. Here's the code that makes this workbook function the way I wanted it to. First, when I open the workbook, you notice that Excel displayed a message box saying, welcome to the commission tracking workbook. And then, even though you didn't see it, it activated sheet 1 and activated cell D10 within that worksheet. Cell D10 is where you type your name. I put that inside an auto open macro. Auto open, which you put in a general code module. We're here in module 1 as opposed to this workbook or sheet 1, sheet 2, or sheet 3. It's a holdover from the Excel 4 macro language. And whenever you open a workbook, it runs that macro as long as it's in a general code module. Next, I defined the function select rate. Select rate accepts a value, in this case called currency total, as a currency, and then it returns its value as a double. It calculates a commission after selecting a rate, and it assigns that value to the variable commission, which I've defined as a currency value. The function then uses a select case statement to find the proper commission rate for a particular sale. In this case, any sale of $10,000 or more gets 8%, $1,000 or more but less than $10,000 gets 6%, and so on. At the end, Excel calculates currency commission by multiplying the total of the sale by the rate, and then rounds that value off to 2 decimal places. It assigns that value to a variable which is the same as the name of the function, and ends the function, which returns the value. Now here's the main body of the program. First, I declared all my variables, and then I entered in my error handling statement. This is on error, go to handler. In this case, I assume the most common error would be someone entering a non-numerical value in cell D11, which is where they're supposed to enter the value of the sale. Perhaps they would put a $sign in front of the value instead of just typing in a number. If that's the case, the program goes down to the handler line, and a message box displays, please be sure your name and the amount are entered correctly, and then it exits the subroutine. So now we'll go back to the top and see what happens if there are no errors. First, it activates sheet 1 in case it isn't already, and then it looks in range cell D10 and assigns its value to the string name variable. It looks in D11 and assigns its value, the value of the sale, to the sale variable. And then it calculates a commission based on the value in D11, and it uses the select rate function that I defined above. After Excel assigns those values to the variables above, it activates sheet 3 and then activates cell A2. Then it looks for the first empty cell in column A, and it does that by asking if the current cell's value is blank. If it is, then it exits this do loop. If not, it activates the cell 1 row below using the offset property and then loops back up to check again. At this point, assuming that the program has gotten out of the loop, it will be in the first empty cell in column A on sheet 3. It writes the name in the current cell, it writes the amount of the sale in the cell 1 position to the right, and it writes the commission, which was calculated earlier, 1 cell to the right of that, or 2 cells, 2 columns to the right of the original. Then Excel goes back to sheet 1 and indicates that your commission is this amount, the commission we calculated earlier, dollars. Would you like to enter another sale? The message box I'm using here displays the yes and no buttons. If the user clicks no, then Excel activates sheet 1. It assigns a blank value to D10 and D11 and then it turns off event handling, and I'll show you why that happens in a moment. It saves the workbook and closes it. If the user says yes, or in other words, doesn't say no, then the else statement kicks off. It displays sheet 1, activates cell D11. In other words, it keeps the name from the previous entry, and it assigns a blank value to cell D11 so that you can enter a new sale without having to delete the value yourself. Earlier, I turned off screen updating so there wouldn't be a flash when we changed between worksheets. And at this point, Excel exits the subroutine using the exit sub language, and I already described the error handling. So why did I turn off events up here? The reason is that I have an event that I want to run every time the workbook closes, unless the workbook has been saved. So that code is here in this workbook. And what happens anytime a user closes the workbook, and I'm assuming they're closing it on their own. In other words, they're not running the subroutine and allowing it to close the workbook. I'm assuming that they click the close button or try to exit the program or whatever. If that happens, then I have Excel delete the values in D10 and D11, the name and the sale, and then save the workbook before allowing the workbook to close. This Capstone project combines many of the skills that you've learned throughout this course. I hope that you can use it as a base for projects you complete on your own.